Welcome back everyone. We're going to be talking about none other than the Samsung Galaxy Note 10. Now this phone came out not quite a year ago. It was it was a little bit less than a year ago, but this phone, once it came out, I don't think really that many people have talked about it since, which is very interesting because I think it was a pretty good phone overall. But there were just some really, really weird and quirky things that Samsung did that really made a lot of people shy away from this specific device. And compared to a lot of the competition, it really wasn't a crazy cool device as the Note line could have been. And in some ways, the Samsung Galaxy S series has kind of overshadowed the Note line because before the Note line was, the biggest and baddest at the time what Samsung had. And now it seems like the S lineup has probably taken over that, which is pretty strange. But the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 came out in 2019 in August. So like I said, not quite a year, but we're getting there. We're going to be there sooner than later. And the biggest thing about this phone that has really, really changed would definitely be the price tag. So when this phone came out, I think it was retailing for about $9.99 or $8.99, somewhere around there. Right now, you can pick one of these things up on Amazon for less than $550, which is so crazy. That is a very big size depreciation for a phone that's not even a year old, and Samsung phones are always the first ones to see the most amount of depreciation. I take that back, it's probably LG followed by Samsung, but it's still a very good device. It's not like this phone is worse than what it was before. It's just the pricing has gone down so much, which is crazy. So if you want to pick one of these up for the prices that I just said, I will leave a link down in the description for the cheapest one I find on Amazon. You can get it from there and help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the front, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 has a 6.3-inch dynamic AMOLED display. Now it is a 1080p panel with 401 pixels per inch. Now the panel is not bad, you know what I mean? It's not a bad looking panel, it's not ugly. You have very little bezel around the whole entire design of the phone, which is cool. Then you have that center hole punch design, which we saw executed on the Samsung Galaxy S20 lineup as well. And I think the overall phone looks pretty good, you know what I mean? It's not a bad looking display. However, coming from the predecessor, which was the Samsung Galaxy Note 9, that thing had a pretty good display overall. I think we all kind of agree with that. And that one was a 1440p display. So how are they going to go from a 1440p display down to a 1080p display for the next generation? You know what I mean? It made no sense. I really don't know why they did that. But that was just one of the weird things they did with it. So they made the display a little bit smaller, but they also made the display lower in resolution, which was kind of weird, but it is what it is. What are we going to do about it? Now you do have that USB Type-C port on this phone as well, which is, at least they didn't remove that. No headphone jack on this phone, which is whatever. You had that S Pen though, and that's probably one of the biggest highlights of this phone. The S Pen is definitely one of those things that, I think it deserves more hype. I think it's one of my favorite things about the whole entire Note lineup, and I think it's one of the more cooler aspects of any smartphones ever. If I was using an Android phone, for day-by-day basis, I would probably end up using a Note 10 Plus or something like that, because I like that S Pen. Even though I don't really talk about it too much when I'm doing these reviews, it's honestly one of my favorite things about it, so I had to say it now before I forgot about it. Now on the back, you have that glass back wireless charging, which is really, really cool. You also have reverse wireless charging, which is a really cool feature for a phone like this, which I really do like. You have that triple camera setup as well, and when you're feeling this phone in the hand still and everything, it does not feel like a cheap phone. It still feels like a very, very good premium phone, because it is still a very good premium phone. It's not a cheap phone at all. The pricing has gone down a lot, but the phone quality is still there. So definitely at the end of the day, the phone still feels like a very, very good device. It does not feel like a cheap phone. And even if you pick up this phone now or a year from now, the design is still going to be holding up extremely well. I mean, if you think about it, what more can the design go to beyond this, especially on the front? What can they do? You know what I mean? Can they just remove the camera hole? Even if they do that, it's not really going to be noticing that big of a difference. Now the design like the Galaxy Note 9, that can get a little bit dated, pretty fast, especially when we have a phone like this. But with the Note 10, if you pick up this phone now, I don't think the design is going to be holding you back at all. So for sure, at the end of the day, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10's design still has held up quite a bit. But there was one thing with the Galaxy Note 10 that Samsung removed that was one of the weirdest things ever, and I don't know why they ever did this, and that is the removal of the microSD card slot for this specific device. Now the Galaxy Note 10 Plus has it, but the Galaxy Note 10 does not have any SD card slot, which is the most weirdest thing they've ever done. I don't know why they did this. And I think I know why they did this is because they wanted more people to buy the Note 10 Plus over the Note 10. But it's a very weird thing. That's, one thing that Samsung was kind of known for, was putting all the bells and whistles onto their Note lineup, and they really didn't do it, and I think that's why this phone, specifically the Note 10, really nobody really talks about it. I don't think I've ever seen anybody ever use one in my life. I've seen a lot of people use the S20, the S10s, the S10es, the S10 Pluses. I don't really see anybody using a Note 10, which is really weird, and probably rightfully so because of the lack of features that this phone specifically has. So in terms of the outside, that really pretty much covers it. You also have IP68 dust and water resistance, so you can go up to 1.5 meters of water for 30 minutes. So a lot of things have still held up, but some things are kind of a little weird too. So in terms of the hardware, that really pretty much covers it. Now hitting on the software, this thing was released with Android Pie. We did get the One UI 2.1 update, which is really cool. And as far as I know, it's going to be getting one more version of software, and then that's really pretty much it. You know what I mean? It's getting Android Pie, Android 10, and Android 11, and then we're pretty much out of software. So later this year, or early next year, whenever that is, it's going to be getting its last version of software, which is Android 11. And so far, I mean, it's been looking like Android 11's, I've ran the beta on my Pixel, and it seems like a pretty good update, pretty minimal from going from Android 10 to Android 11. But here's the thing, I want to test Samsung, and I want them to start improving their software updates for their devices, even for their Note lineup of phones. Because if you think about it, their Note lineup is more expensive sometimes than their S lineup, but their S lineup kind of gets longer software support than their Note lineup if you think about it. Like, yeah, they're both starting in Android Pie, but the S10 was able to get Android Pie for a longer period of time. So I feel like at least their Note lineup should get an extra version of software on top, but it is what it is. I feel like I'm barking up a tree that nobody's ever going to listen to. So for sure, at the end of the day, I think the software life cycle of this phone is still pretty average. You're not getting more, like multiple years of support. You're getting good support, I think, for the majority of people, but I think when it goes beyond that, you're pretty much stuck when it comes down to the software support. So you're still supported for the time being, but I don't know how much longer that's going to go on. So that really pretty much covers it up there. Now hitting on the performance, this thing was released with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 855 chipset, an octa-core CPU, an Adreno 640 GPU, and there was only one model of this phone, the 256 gig model with 8 gigs of RAM. What I can tell you about the performance is that I think it's a pretty good performing phone still. It's still a very good performing phone. I think with One UI 2, the gesture-based design has really improved a lot of things, and I think if you're doing small apps, if you're doing multitasking with large apps, I think you're going to be a pretty good performance. You're going to get pretty good performance from this thing. Now the only times you might run into some issues, one thing that I saw is the heating of this phone. Sometimes it's when I was playing, I think, Real Racing 3 and some other heavy intensive games, there was a lot of, heating up going on in this one. I think I mentioned it back then on my review at the time. And, it's still there, when I'm playing a game or whatever, it still happens. But I think it happens to a less degree now with these specific updates. I think as soon as I bought it, it was like the first update it was on. So I think that since then it's gotten a little bit better. But even at that point, I mean, it's still a really good performing phone, but it's not like a great performing phone. It's not like amazing. It's not like it's going to blow your socks off. And especially, I don't know about Samsung software, especially with One UI 2. And we all know about Samsung software. Over time, it can get a lot bogged down with the amount of storage and background processes going on, with the amount of bloatware on these phones. So over time, Samsung phones kind of get a little bit slower, faster than a lot of other phones. So for the time being, I think it's still a pretty fast phone, but again, things can change. But I'll also say it's a really good performing phone for the time being. So in terms of performance, that pretty much covers it. Now hitting on the cameras, like I said, we have a triple camera setup on the back, a 12 megapixel wide angle lens, a 12 megapixel telephoto lens, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide sensor. And I'm really happy that we have kind of a wide range of different cameras we can choose from. So if we want to zoom in a lot, we have that capability. If we want to zoom out a lot, we have that capability too. You can do 4K at 60 frames, which is really awesome as well. And the camera and video quality was actually really good. I think I really liked it. It wasn't like the craziest best, and I think if I was comparing it to a lot of other phones, one thing Samsung does is they like to brighten up their photos and videos a lot, which is something I really like. But I still think iOS and just iPhones in general has the better video quality. So again, they kind of go both hand in hand. But I think when it comes down to camera quality in the photos, the Samsung Galaxy Note 10 still takes amazing quality photos and videos. You have a 10 megapixel front-facing camera. You can do 4K at 30 on that too. And definitely when you combine both cameras, I give it a thumbs up for sure. Now ending it off with the battery life, we have a 3500 mAh battery on this thing, and this is one of the weirdest things about it because the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 had a bigger size battery in it, and I don't know why they decreased the size of battery in it. It didn't really make much sense, but you have the capability of doing the reverse wireless charging, which is really cool on a phone like this, so I think that's honestly one of my favorite things about it. The battery size is pretty average for the most part, but like I stated, you can get by throughout a day probably, but it's still very weird that they didn't increase the size battery like they have done with the S lineup, year after year. So at the end of the day, what I can tell you is I think this phone definitely at the end of the day still holds up in 2020, for almost, maybe 9 months it's been out. I think it's held up very well. I don't think it's been a slow or, demise or anything like that. I'm just surprised that more people don't talk about it. And the more I think about it, the more it makes sense of why nobody talks about it is because there's so many other phones in the marketplace that have really outshined this thing, including the Samsung Galaxy S10 and the S20 lineup. I think those phones are better than this phone. This phone was pretty average at the time, and hopefully with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20, Samsung can really knock it out of the park and bring back the SD card and bring back a lot of those other things that made the Note lineup, what it was. So I don't want to say this is a bad phone. I think this is a great phone to pick up, but compared to phones like the S20, even the S10, I think those are probably better pickups than this phone. So I'll leave all three of those phones linked down below. If you want to get them from there, you can, but that's really pretty much it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, let me know in the comment section as well. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate if you guys would check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.